Starting us off in at number 10, he is resistant to hypnosis. The Super Soldier Serum gives Cap immunity towards specific toxins and accelerates his metabolism, but it also gives him resistance to hypnosis, which is really cool, except for the fact that the resistance to hypnosis is kind of moot in a few ways when you're incredibly vulnerable to manipulation in the first place, and that is something that Cap definitely is. Now before you Cap fans get upset over this, it's true. Cap has on numerous occasions been incredibly susceptible and responsive to manipulation. He's been manipulated into doing things for Hydra and other foes on several occasions. Hell, a version of Steve was going around shouting "Hail Hydra" in 2017's Secret Empire after all, guys. I know it wasn't the real Steve Rogers or the 616 Steve Rogers, but come on. Look at how he was manipulated by Hydra when they covertly were running S.H.I.E.L.D. to secretly do their bidding in the MCU. Yeah, ultimately Rogers just wants to serve the greater good, but sometimes he can be naive about it. I mean, it's not totally a bad quality to have, to see the good in everybody and want to trust people.
Number 10. Doing math for chaos. Many iterations of the Scarlet Witch have the ability to wield chaos magic. But in the 1610 universe, that being the Ultimate Verse, Wanda had a bit of a different way of using her powers. And this way also amplified her magic. She had to do math. She would have to calculate the mathematical probability of the effect she intended to create. So this meant she would have to create increasingly complex formulas to create more complex effects. Just sucking all the fun out of magic. I'm kidding, math is important, but it's far more fun to imagine just willing things into existence with your mind. This was one of the most unique depictions of the Scarlet Witch's powers to date. And while complicated, it was a type of complicated most could understand, and it definitely made some people not want her powers anymore.
Number 10. Skilled Spy. Jessica Drew has been trained in espionage by Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. and actually is a fantastic spy. Her training likely also came in handy in the Spider-Verse when she infiltrated the Inheritors, going undercover and impersonating Morland's lover on Loomworld, who apparently just happened to look exactly like her. Weird. Talk about taking one for the team. Her assistance in the Spider-Verse storyline, however, went to show just how formidable a foe Jessica Drew can be. All I'm saying is you would not want to get on her bad side. So wait, when Veronica the Skrull Queen was posing as Jessica Drew, when she went on like a spy mission for S.H.I.E.L.D., would we call that spyception? Spies on spies on spies? Number 9. Super Sleuth. When you think of Jessica Drew, you may think of her more spider-like abilities, but what you might have forgotten is that she's actually a registered private investigator. That's right. At one point, Jessica Drew moved to San Francisco and worked hard to get her private investigator license. Not only that, but she was good at it too. During this time in her life, everything felt like it was actually going super right. She opened her own successful PI business, her vigilante persona was being praised by the city as she was referred to as the Dark Angel of San Francisco, and she fell in love with her landlord, David. Unfortunately, the last part didn't end up working out after David discovered that she was a superhero. And after a fight with Morgan Le Fay, she ended up comatose. And once she was revived, powerless. Harsh. What a harsh time. Not surprised she's a super sleuth, considering that she was kind of inspired by Nancy Drew. Number 8. Insane amount of endurance. Jessica Drew is one of the few heroes who is known for fighting crime even while very visibly pregnant. I mean, sure, other women have probably done it. Sue Storm has also probably fought while she was, with child, but none have gone quite as hard as Spider-Woman. While checking out an off-world maternity ward, a very, very pregnant Jessica found herself fighting hard as it was invaded by Skrulls. I kid you not. Not only is that impressive enough, but she kicked some serious butt and almost handily defeated them until she went into labor. She managed to get away with some doctors, give birth, and return with stitches as she had just had a C-section delivery and take out the rest of the Skrulls. Like, I'm all for girl power, but this is an impossible level of endurance. What is going on in these comics? Oh my goodness. I'm trying to think of all the pregnant women that I have known in my life, and I'm like, could you imagine? Although they're rage. They sometimes can rage like crazy, so maybe it could happen.
Number 9. Fortune Teller. There have been many iterations of Wanda across the multiverse, for it is vast and all-encompassing. So it is on Earth 1000, Wanda is a fortune teller, going by the name Mistress Wanda, which makes you think that maybe she has another side business going, like Good Omens. So long story short, she appeared briefly in one of those events wherein characters are battling across the multiverse, in order to keep it together. She appeared in Domination Factor 4.7 in the issue Lost in Space-Time, dealing with fallout of Loki having tricked the Avengers and the Fantastic Four into altering the course of history. The heroes need to possess versions of themselves in these altered universes to right the wrongs. So it is that Wanda ends up taking over the body of her fortune teller counterpart mid-reading. Because is there any better time?
And at number 9, Cap Wolf. Captain America can become a werewolf, or at least he has become a werewolf in the past. He briefly had werewolf powers in 1992 during a 6-part story arc titled Man and Wolf in Captain America issue 402. In the woods outside of Massachusetts, X-Men member Wolverine finds a dead body, so he calls Cap in for assistance. While investigating, Steve ends up uncovering a town containing a bunch of lycanthropes, and of course, in the process, he himself is transformed into a werewolf. It's Cap Wolf, a vicious superhero with all the powers of Captain America and all the powers of a werewolf. Despite it not sticking, this wasn't the only time that a Captain America has become a werewolf. Sam Wilson would experience a similar situation years later while operating under the mantle. Oh, that's kind of fun. Moving on to number 8, his musical abilities. Okay, so this one is a little silly, and it's an almost ability, sort of. Back in 1985, we almost added Broadway musical star to the list of things that Captain America has done. Cap was meant to have his own musical with an estimated budget of $4 million. The concept actually sounds a little amazing. Also, this was outside of the comics, guys. The story would have followed Steve Rogers suffering through a midlife crisis, lulz, then running off on a mission to rescue his girlfriend from a terrorist who kidnapped her. As you can imagine, a lot of people thought it was a terrible idea. Needless to say, nothing came from this idea aside from a poster advertising it in comic books, looking for girls aged 10 to 14 for the cast to play what was described as Cap's special friend. Yikes. Keeping on that silly train, that brings us to our next number. In at 7, he can be a convincing Nazi. Cap has been a Nazi more than most heroes, and definitely more than any of his Avengers peers. That's kind of a skill, right? The ability to be a convincing Nazi, yeah. Aside from Secret Empire in 2017, the whole thing was a different Steve Rogers, it's a long story. Cap has also raised his fascist flag in 1965 and in 1979. The former was in Tales of Suspense, issue 67, and the latter in Captain America, issue 234. Both times he snapped out of it though before the conclusion of the story. So, not a permanent Nazi, but Nazi for a day. Ew. Still bad. 6. Super racism. Captain America used to be quite racist back in the 40s, as in he literally used to go around shouting, I quote, "White America is a strong America." Wow. Now this is very much a product of the wartime comics, where comics were largely used as propaganda even before the US entered into the fray of World War II. Cap and other heroes, including DC's Superman and Batman, found themselves saying pretty terrible things and doing pretty terrible things with other races and cultures, including the Japanese and the Chinese, who were largely targets in pop culture media at that time. So why is this on a powers list? Because characters the likes of Captain America have great influence over their readers, especially considering he is such an important patriotic symbol. What he does in his panels matter. While this is obviously no longer the case, Cap is anything but racist these days, it is still a startling panel to see.
Number 7. Glide. Many think that Spider-Woman can fly in the comics, which would be pretty cool, given that she doesn't have Spider-Man's famous web shooters. However, this is not true, she cannot fly. What she can do is glide. Glide, 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 glide. This power of gliding through the air looking like she is flying is granted by her suit design, and is still pretty cool all in all. She once had a fight with the Hornet in mid-air and kicked his butt, which he definitely deserved, by the way. Jessica Drew is the only Spider-Woman to have this design. Many different Spider-Women have come and gone after her, but while those other Spider-Women may have adopted the mantle, they all adopted pretty different suits. I think one of them had like webbing, but a lot of them have like legs coming out of them. It's creepy. I kinda like it though. Number 6. Psychic shields. Jessica had psychic shields implanted by S.H.I.E.L.D. and some strong ones too apparently. These shields allow her to resist attacks from 3-in-1, who once joined with Emma Frost in an attempt to take on a future alternate version of Jean Grey, and allowed her to resist an attack from Professor Xavier, which of course also surprised him, leaving her standing after many others were knocked down. Pretty impressive, Jess.
Number 8. VENOMVERSE Wanda. Of course, if you were in the Venomverse, you either had Venom symbiote powers or had been consumed by a poison, and hence were a poison version of the character. In this universe, Wanda was a poison who worked for Lord Doom, and seemed to have retained her magical abilities, but with all of those of a poison as well. So she is essentially subsumed, but all of her memories and the like remain intact, because that is part of the process. So is this Wanda always just here for Doom? It's a pairing that makes sense if you know he's not manipulating and influencing it like that one time. Let their love be natural. Number 7, telekinesis / telepathy. Hopping over to the MCU and one of the most popular versions of the Scarlet Witch to date. This Scarlet Witch has a different power set than her comic book counterpart. As a result of exposure to the Mind Stone, she has developed a form of telekinesis and telepathy. However, the way it is animated and used is slightly reminiscent of her comic book powers. This Scarlet Witch is still extremely powerful, and according to recent rumors by Kevin Feige, she has been elevated to strongest Avenger, which, if that is the case, 100% legit and earned. We should all be afraid of the Scarlet Witch. Also, did you see what culture did heroic Thanos? I think they're like the worst. Number 6, Weapon Hex. Weapon Hex comes to us from Warp World, a world of characters mashed together after Gamora, wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, folded the universe in half in the Soul Gem, where she had trapped people's souls. So Weapon Hex is a fusion of the Scarlet Witch and Laura Kinney, aka X-23. Her name is still Laura Kinney though. She is meant to be a vessel for both science and magic, and she is trained to be a weapon. But the love she receives ultimately gives her a kinder and more understanding disposition. There's a lot of X-23 in this version and only a little Wanda. Mostly it's there in the powers, which are written on her body, which is pretty neat and a cool design. Number 5, Hex powers. So when the Scarlet Witch was first introduced, she had what were called Hex powers. These powers weren't very defined, except that she could impact probability, which was something writers at the time absolutely loved, because it meant that her powers could be used for literally whatever they wanted. Basically, she could do whatever the plot needed her to, and this would go on for years until the new aspect of her powers, chaos magic, would be introduced, which brings us to number 4. Number 4, chaos magic. Now, instead of just hex powers, she had the ability to channel and wield chaos magic. This was defined by writer Kurt Busiek. This was because the demon Chthon has manipulated her mutation at birth. This was to allow her the ability to wield magic. This was meant to explain some of the things she had done in the past that went beyond just, oh, she can use hexes and manipulate probability. This meant that she could perform complex spells given enough concentration and practice and training. And during this time period, she would even resurrect Wonder Man. Hooray! Number 3, resist the Phoenix Force. In some of her more recent iterations, before her last retcon that removed her mutant abilities and history kinda, and made her one of the second most wanted people for crimes against mutant kind, this was because of the no more mutants thing. Doesn't matter her mental state or the years she genuinely thought she was a mutant. No, only tyranny. I mean, hooray, mutant pride. Seriously though, that incident is a great source for conflict, and it's cool to see it mined. So Wanda was shown to be able to resist the Phoenix Force and be so powerful herself that she was someone the Phoenix Five were actually afraid of. Valid. The Scarlet Witch is pretty terrifying. So few people can wield the Phoenix Force, yet alone contend with it.
Up next, number 5, the power of preach. It is undeniable that Captain America is a gifted orator. There's a reason why he's often in a leadership position. Dude is really good at motivating and inspiring people. It's kind of his whole shtick, considering his superhero persona in the first place. Let's quickly count down some of the more inspirational speeches of his over the years. In the MCU, there's the whole Price of Freedom speech in Captain America the Winter Soldier. He gave a powerful speech when turning down the presidency in the comics in Captain America issue 250. He even finds himself filming PSAs for high schools about detention, as seen in the MCU Spider-Man film. And then there's the whole whatever it takes speech in Endgame. Hell, even the Ultimate Universe Cap can give a good speech, although a mildly rude and offensive one. He went on a tangent about how the A on his helmet didn't stand for France after he was advised to surrender. Regardless of what it is he's saying, Cap can command a room and can compel almost anyone's attention with his gift of the gab. Moving on to number 4, super accuracy. Once upon a time in Captain America Comics issue 3, the third issue of his solo series that began in the 40s, Steve Rogers threw a sharp dinosaur bone at a foe and impaled him, murdering him. I mean, it was 1941, so a lot of stuff like this slipped under the radar prior to the Comics Code Authority. Ah, the golden age of comics. Anywho, the story takes place in a museum as Cap and Bucky attempt to stop 2 small-time robbers from thieving. The dude he kills is a guy named Lenny. He's a petty henchman who probably did not deserve to die, especially in that way. Regardless, that is some damn good accuracy, impaling the kid right through the heart with that bone. It's almost impressive if it wasn't so homicidal. Speaking of using objects to kill people, in at number 3, he can get homicidal with a shield. Steve Rogers has quite the bloody track record. Clearly. Aside from using dinosaur bones to impale lowly criminals, he's also used his shield to murder people too. So wholesome. I mean, it is kind of impressive though, isn't it? I mean, sure, it's made of vibranium, but using an object like that effectively to commit homicide is definitely a skill. Right? Right. Anyway, Cap used his shield to help out superhero Union Jack when Jack's brother, Baron Blood, a vampire if the name didn't give it away, went on a rampage. Cap found himself having to permanently take care of the problem by decapitating him with his shield as Union Jack looked on, and as Baron Blood clawed at his chest too, to boot. Moving on to number 2, the Battle Van. You've heard of the Batmobile, the Quinjet, the Hell Cycle. You name it. But have you heard of the Battle Van? Aside from having a bit of a lackluster name, the Battle Van is more commonly known as Captain America's van, which isn't much better, is it? A product of the 80s, this rad custom-built van, a Chevy nonetheless, was a nondescript vehicle designed by Wakandans for Cap. I mean, I get it, it's really good when you're trying to be low-key, but it kinda looks like he just stole the Mystery Machine from Scooby-Doo and then spray painted it one color to avoid getting caught. Those dang kids. The van can actually change colors, might I add, but whatever. It can basically function as a base on the go for Cap. It has a mount for his motorcycle at the back because, you know, one vehicle wasn't enough, and even has a little cot if he feels like nap time. Oh. It is worth noting that an alternate reality version of Cap from Earth 600043 actually uses this van religiously, which is pretty great. And finally, in at number 1, he cannot get drunk. Because of Cap's incredibly fast metabolism, thanks to the super soldier serum, he has an immunity to a lot of things. The serum prevents the buildup of fatigue poisons in his muscles, his body is resistant to gases and hypnosis like we mentioned, and he has an immunity to alcohol, meaning he can never get drunk. Often his resistance to alcohol is played up as a joke in the comics or his cinematic appearances, but in a way, that kinda sucks, doesn't it? I mean, not saying that you need to get drunk at a party to have fun, but having the option to choose would be nice at least. He's not the only superhero who suffers from this ailment either. Deadpool has a similar problem thanks to his boosted regenerative healing factor.
Number 5, super smell. As Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew has heightened senses, but one you might be surprised to hear about is her super smell. Her smell is so good that she was able to tell that the Nick Fury she was talking to in New Avengers Volume 1, Issue 23 was an AI decoy, as opposed to the real thing. She commented to Maria Hill on her improvements to the model, but cited the smell as the thing that tipped her off. That's some Wolverine level sense of smell there. Unless S.H.I.E.L.D's AIs like reek of oil or something, which I sincerely doubt considering how many other people they have succeeded in fooling, this is pretty impressive. Number 4, dimensional travel. Jessica ended up getting her very own dimensional watch following the Spider-Verse events. This device was listed as part of her equipment at the back of Spider-Gwen Volume 2, Issue 7. The weird thing though is that in that issue, it was Spider-Gwen's dimensional watch that went missing, not Jessica's. Yet Jessica was concerned about being without a way to teleport home after her and Silk of Earth 616 had joined Gwen on Earth 65 for brunch. Spider-Gwen's device was stolen and Jessica Drew, Spider-Gwen, and Silk of Earth 616 had to team up to retrieve it. It's just really weird that at the end of this issue, it acknowledges that Jess has one, cause like she clearly didn't have it in that issue. If she found out that she did, she would have like teleported home to her baby in an instant. I am sure. She loves that baby. She loves it. Little baby Jerry. Pretty cute baby actually. Number 3, pheromones. When Jessica Drew was first introduced, she struggled a lot to deal with other people. I mean, of course, she was basically raised in a tube and then later brainwashed by a Hydra into thinking that she'd been a spider, so kind of understand where that comes from. She was known as socially awkward and often written as shy. She ended up feeling isolated and removed from the world, though we later found out the reason she seemed to drive so many people away is because she unknowingly produced fear-inducing pheromones. This later was a forgotten power as Jessica took medication to help suppress it. Later it was implied that the extra pheromones she produced were actually seductive in nature. Or maybe she had just gotten better control of them? I don't know. But she definitely has used them to seduce people before. And once again later she decided to use a fragrance to neutralize and mask her pheromones instead. So this power is still not really often brought up or used, though one time she did use it to get Hulk to make her a sandwich. I'm not joking, that happened. Can check it out. Number 2, superhuman speed. Not only does Spider-Woman have superhuman strength like other spider people, but she also has superhuman speed. In Spider-Woman Volume 1 Issue 40, she is fighting the Flying Tiger. When he swings and misses her, he ends up puzzled. He wonders if she even moved and how he could have possibly missed her. Didn't see her move at all. Jessica reveals in a thought bubble that she is simply too fast for him to see, confessing that she can move faster than one's eyes. She also seems to be able to fall really fast in the comics for some reason. And that fight between her and Tiger has some crazy hilarious dialogue. If you haven't read it yet, you really should. No, Tiger, you're inept. I'm gonna use that insult on people. You're inept. Stop that. Number 1. Venom Blasts. A unique ability that Spider-Woman has that not many other spider people possess is her Venom Blasts. She can shoot bioelectric energy from her hands, which allows her to shock an assailant and often knock them out. This power has the ability to target multiple people, travel through metal as it is an electrical current, and even move through others and leap to another target, like lightning. And these Venom Blasts are powerful. She's used these powers before to hurt Null, Breaker of Worlds, stun an Aleph, and even kill someone. Accidentally, of course. She didn't mean to. She's like, meh, oops, killed ya.
Number 2. Scarlet Witch Famine. This Wanda comes from Earth 10082 and was transformed by Apocalypse into a horseman of the Apocalypse, Famine, which of course lent a whole new devastating arsenal of wasting powers to her already large power set. This character appeared as part of the Heroic Age event. This is another event dealing with time streams and scales and the like, featuring Kang the Conqueror. They at first appeared largely as a la gasp moment for certain Avengers to be shocked that their future selves are horsemen, especially Spider-Man. He was taken aback. Angel becoming Archangel is still the coolest horseman plot. Share your fave down below. And in at number 1, we have reality warping. I've put this at number 1 because while this may be the ability most know the Scarlet Witch for, it is also one of the most controversial. This power was achieved via retcon. After Busiek had worked in chaos magic, Avengers Disassembled would then retcon her abilities to purely mutant, and they would place them in the reality warping vein. And she would be so powerful that she was on an omega scale and she could alter anything, and she did. Firstly, aside from her kids, she created the House of M Universe and then nearly erased all mutants from existence. However, these powers would be short-lived. Only a few years later in Children's Crusade, which would also reintroduce those kids, her powers would be re-established as magical, and her powers would be said to be amplified by an outside source, which is why she could do all the extra things she did in those storylines. This retcon, I'm not sure why it happened and then why it was so quickly undone. What do you prefer? Chaos magic or reality warping?
Number 10. Super Strength. This one is definitely pretty well known, but hey, maybe some people didn't know, so that's why it's on the list. Luke Cage's super strength is one of his coolest powers. It's helped him in a lot of very difficult situations. Not only that, but it also makes him one of the stronger Marvel heroes. He has been able to take down so many villains, and I mean occasionally even other heroes with this power. And while yes, you may have heard of it, it needed to be mentioned because it's one of his most signature traits. Number 9, basically invulnerable. Yep, Luke Cage is basically invulnerable. I mean, there are certain things that can penetrate his skin, but not a lot. He can withstand bullets, knives, even some superpowered weapons. But he is susceptible to things like adamantium or certain magical weapons. In his TV show, there was even a special bullet called the Judas Bullet. It was made by Hammer Industries using leftover Tritari metal from the Battle of New York. It explodes once it's inside its victim, which instantly kills normal humans, but Luke Cage was able to survive it, although it did really hurt him. Number 8, super healing. Luke Cage's super healing is one of the best in the Marvel Universe. He doesn't even need it since nothing can really technically hurt him, but whenever he gets into a fight with another hero, or hit with adamantium, or shot with the Judas Bullet, he is lucky to have this ability. It is able to heal him back to full health, as if nothing happened. It doesn't happen instantly, but way faster than that of an average human.
Number 7, Bronze Tiger. Now the Amalgam universe has some mashups that people will never forget. I mean, here on this channel, we won't let you forget about Darkclaw, ever, even if you wanted to. But not every Amalgam was one that people felt was spot on, and some felt a little thrown together. Case in point, Bronze Tiger. So Bronze Tiger was a combination of Black Panther and Bronze Tiger, just full on having the name of one of them, not even like Black Tiger or something like that. Also, Bronze Tiger started off as a villain, then transitioned into anti-hero, so he seems a bit of an odd matchup. The history is very brief and seems far more T'Challa, only now the name is Ben'Chala. Ben'Chala. B''N''Chala.
Number 6, Amazing Fighter. This one is not so much a power, but ability, so I just wanted to clarify that right now because it'll probably be mentioned in the comments. But back to my main point, Luke is an insanely skilled fighter. While he was growing up, he constantly taught himself how to fight, and later on he trained with one of Marvel's most skilled martial artists, Danny Rand, aka the Iron Fist. So with all of that, he is truly someone you would not want to get in a fight with. Seriously, like, unless you have a death wish, then by all means, go right ahead. and fight him.
Up next, number 5, he might be immortal. It has been speculated that Sam is a member of the Externals, an immortal mutant group not to be confused with the Eternals, the race that Thanos and Eros belong to. Context time. The Externals are a rare subspecies of mutants who are immortal, are capable of rebirth, and can absorb power post-mortem. It varies, and most of them were X-Men antagonists over the years. Each External represents an intangible concept, like despair, fortitude, wisdom, opportunity, patience, corruption, the list goes on. So why is Sam presumed to be an External? Because of his ability to come back to life after being killed, as seen in X-Force issue 9 from 1993. While his status as an External is not clear, and Cable has even stated his belief that Sam is not an External, despite stating in the past that he was before, his awakening was something that was felt by all of the other Externals when it happened. It's also worth noting that he died twice over the years. And the intangible concept that he's associated with is hope, so oh.
Number 4. Super stamina. Stamina can vary from person to person. A lot of people will work for years to build their stamina up. So if they are, if they are a runner, or maybe they're just lifting weights, or maybe they're just some sort of any type of physical activity, they can last a lot longer. Luke Cage has amazing stamina. He was a strong guy even before he got his powers, but when he got them, everything was amplified, so he could literally fight for just a really long time, and he will never get tired. I mean, even if he did eventually get tired, and that would be a while, the guy is a hero. He would keep pushing himself past all of his limits, because that is what heroes do to protect the city they live in, and Luke Cage always wants to protect people.
Number 3, Black Panda. Welcome back to the world of Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham, world of quirky Looney Tunes-esque characters, and plenty of animal puns. If you love those two things, then this book is for you. On this universe, instead of Black Panther, we have Black Panda, and he doesn't appear too often, but has all the abilities of Black Panther, or at least that's what it seems like. But he's all cute and chibified and looks a little bit like Mickey Mouse. Kinda, sorta, a smidge. Either way, Black Panda is super cute.
Number 2, chemical resistance. Similar to what I was saying about hot and cold, chemicals don't really hurt him. Some at least. I mean, there are some that could probably hurt him, but just average ones that humans are not supposed to interact with would have really no effect on him. Like, he could walk in a room filled with harsh chemicals and absolutely be fine. Whereas a human would probably need to wear a protective suit. It's a very useful power to have, if he's ever in a chemical plant or just, cleaning the house. Number 1, Thunderclap. A lot of people attribute this ability to the Hulk, and in all fairness, I think Hulk does use it a little bit more, but Luke Cage has been known to use the Thunderclap on specific occasions. Basically, if he claps his hands together really hard, he can create this massive boom that can destroy buildings or just hit people back, and is a very useful thing to have, especially in tight situations if you're surrounded or you just want to move the fight away from a certain area.
Number 10, super speed thinking. Evidently, super speed doesn't just affect how fast your body moves, but it affects the mind. Quicksilver is able to think faster than the average human, allowing him to perceive reality faster and respond accordingly. And if you think about it, this is pretty much essential to anyone with super speed. If you can't perceive what's coming at you when you're moving, you'd just be running into everything. In fact, as a result, Quicksilver has an arrogant personality, which writer Peter David explains is a result of this, stating that Quicksilver lives in a world filled with people who don't know how to use cash machines, and want to know all the ways to send packages to Africa, and can never get your order right in a Burger King unless you repeat it several times. That would tend to make you feel very superior to everyone and very impatient with everyone. I like that, that's really well thought out. In fact, it relates to his next power. Number 9, photographic memory. So, with that kind of mind, you need to be able to take in details at a faster rate, which essentially gives Quicksilver a photographic memory. Now you might be thinking, photographic memory is cool, but it's not a superpower. But you might not know this, but there is no evidence suggesting that photographic memory even exists, which, given the circumstances, would actually make it a real superpower. So I'm giving it to Quicksilver. Number 8, speed epidemic. In the Marvel Zombies world, Quicksilver is actually instrumental for the widespread of the epidemic, due to the fact that his super speed allowed him to infect a large amount of people in a remarkably short time. Quicksilver effectively made it impossible to contain the zombie virus just because of how rapidly he was able to spread it. So Quicksilver may be the most effective zombie in history.
Number 7, he is a martial arts master. Once again, thanks to the years of intense training with Captain America, Sam is a master in judo, karate, and many other various art styles of martial arts, making him one of the most dangerous fighters in the world. Because of these skills, he has had the upper hand against some of the most well-trained opponents in the world, and he was even able to take down superhumans as strong as the Wrecking Crew members.
Number 6. Superior breathing. So Quicksilver is able to move comfortably in environments where oxygen is reduced to a point where an ordinary human could no longer breathe, indicating that his breathing ability, something essential to any runner, is enhanced by his mutation in some capacity, which would also indicate that he has superhuman stamina.
Number 5. Expert Marksman. Now, despite not having the super accuracy that Hawkeye possesses, Sam still manages to do pretty well for himself, especially when a majority of his shooting is done from the sky. As seen in the MCU, he carries a number of smaller firearms on him for some powerful long-range attacks, and he rarely misses.
Number 4. Power restoration. So after Quicksilver lost his powers, he exposed himself to the Terrigen Mist to regain his abilities. However, he also took Terrigen crystals into his body, which also gave him the ability to restore mutant powers that were taken away. That said, this process could usually prove fatal. Still, risk aside, it is a pretty impressive power.
Number 3 is regenerative healing factor. Once again, focusing on Joaquin, thanks to Malice's experiments, he was also turned into a vampire, making him a human-falcon vampire hybrid. Now, this regenerative power comes from the vampire portion of him and has allowed Joaquin to survive fatal wounds, even ones as serious as having his head bitten off. It's even theorized that it could help him regrow parts of his body were he to lose them. There is a major drawback to this ability though. It prevents him from ever being human again, and that's because avian carriers of vampirism don't suffer from a lot of side effects that afflict humans, and only some of those aspects of that condition were transferred to Joaquin. But I mean, hey, if it keeps him alive and fighting, there's really no reason to complain, right?
Number 2. Transfer molecular vibrations. So Quicksilver is able to vibrate his molecules at high speeds, but he's also able to transfer those vibrations to other objects, which can cause it to explode or collapse. And this is a skill he uses to escape prison upon regaining his powers in X Factor, The Quick and the Dead. And of course, this ability to destabilize his molecules allows him to walk through solid objects. And number 1. Flight. Yeah, I've only seen him use this ability once, and that was in the original X-Men comics way back in issue 44. In an attempt to give chase to Angel, he announces that he's recently developed the ability to fly, but can only remain airborne for more than a few seconds. By all means, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've researched, this hasn't come up since then. Still, it happened, and given its few appearances and obscurity, it's topping my list.
And at number 10, thermochemical energy. Let's start off this list by addressing the basics behind Sam's powers. He possesses the ability to generate something called thermochemical energy from his body, releasing it from his skin. This is energy that allows for the mutant to thrust himself and propel his body through the air, not dissimilar to a rocket. In the early days, he was only able to emit this energy from his feet and his legs, but nowadays his skills have improved tenfold, and he can release this energy from any part of his body, but we'll dive into more of that a bit later on. And at number 9, superhuman durability. This one is kind of a given when your mutant power is literally flinging yourself through the air at dangerously fast speeds. When using his powers, Sam's durability increases significantly, all thanks to the energy field that forms around his body. When not using his powers though, he's as vulnerable as a regular old human being. Despite what he's learned in his training, of course. I mean, that'd come in pretty nifty. Like, imagine you just wanted to show off to your friends and then you're just like, I'm gonna shoot myself into a wall and then break through it like the Kool-Aid Man and live to tell the tale. And at number 8, willpower. Shooting oneself through the air is no light matter. Is that a pun? I guess. If you think about it, it could be potentially fatal for Sam to do so, but that's where this facet of his powers come in. He is able to maneuver his body, control his speed, and change his direction solely through sheer willpower. This could potentially answer why our next number has been a question for those of you who are Cannonball fans.
Number 7. Super Jump. This ability is tied to his incredible strength and durability. Because he is both strong and durable, he is able to use his strength to push himself off the ground and leap great distances. And it doesn't hurt him because of his durability. He could jump up to certain buildings or is able to jump off very high points and land without even a scratch. All of those traits definitely come in handy for any superhero, and not even all superheroes don't even have that. So the fact that Luke Cage does makes life a little bit easier for him when he goes up. To protect the city. Also, who would want to be able to jump great distances? I mean, that'd be awesome, just jumping around the city. Man, a guy can dream.
Up next, number 6, flight. Duh, right? But Sam's ability to fly is one that has a history. Now, in the early days, the character wasn't able to stop himself once he throttled himself into the sky and began to fly. Despite being able to maneuver in order to fully stop, he would have to find an object strong enough to force him to stop by holding onto it or like straight up crashing into it. Or he would keep flying until his powers ran out of energy, as if he were some sort of propeller plane puttering out of gas. But now, after years of practice, the character can stop himself without having to resort to those tactics. I guess practice does make perfect.
Number 5. Acute senses. Now you may be thinking, are you okay? Hypersenses are a good thing. However, not when they get to the point where they overwhelm you. Sometimes on rare occasions, when it behooves the plot, T'Challa's abilities can be a bit of a hindrance rather than a help. So even though other characters are rocking their acute senses in regular situations, sometimes T'Challa can't. Sometimes they play this off as because they're so acute, stronger than other people's. That's why he is king. That's not true, but it still sounds as legit as anything else, you know, when it comes to the fluctuating scale of his senses. Now this does actually make sense, but it comes down to a matter of consistency.
And at 4, King of the Dwarves. Alright, this one is a bit obscure, but back in What If Volume 2, Issue 12 from 1990, in a story titled What If the X-Men Stayed in Asgard, you know, the one in which Storm becomes the new goddess of thunder, Sam ends up staying too. And he falls in love with Kindra, the daughter of Eotree, the Dwarf King. You know, the fellow that Peter Dinklage played in the MCU in Avengers Infinity War. Eotree dies later on in a battle, and Sam ends up taking on the mantle of the King of the Dwarves, under the name of Sam the First. One can assume that the title comes with the perks Eotree had, which was an expertise on forging weapons and an extended lifespan, the latter likely being what Sam would have inherited. And to be fair, considering that when the X-Men were in Asgard, Cannibal pretty much saved Odin's life, so he definitely has earned the respect of the Asgardians enough to take up such a title.
Number 3. Hot and cold resistance. So since Luke is basically invulnerable, certain environments don't affect him like they would us. This applies to extreme hot and cold environments. While a lot of other people or even heroes would fall under these harsh conditions, Luke Cage is able to carry on and continue whatever he's doing. Like, it could be the coldest day, you know, with snow and it's like super windy, and he could just walk outside, t-shirt, shorts if he wanted to. I mean, he probably wouldn't do that, but he could. And that is something that a lot of people might not know about him. But, you know, some probably already do.
Moving on to number 2, energy absorption. Cannibal can absorb and redirect energies from others. In Uncanny X-Men issue 341 from 1997, he took on Gladiator, aka Kalark, the warrior from the Shi'ar Empire, the Shi'ar Imperial Guard leader, who gives off some serious Superman vibes, might I add. Gladiator is a pretty strong dude. When fighting him, Sam was able to absorb his punches and redirect their energy force to use as an attack. That's not the only thing that he can do when it comes to energy absorption though. He can absorb outside kinetic energy to add to his own energy supply, making our next number even more powerful. And at number 1, his blast field. Perhaps the coolest thing that Cannibal can do is that he can manifest his energy as an impenetrable and practically indestructible blast field. Not only does this act as a very specific force field of sorts that protects his body incredibly well, he can also do a whole lot of other neat stuff with it. He can extend the energy to encompass him like a personal shield, extend it far enough to protect others under that shield, and he can shape it in various ways. He's done so to imprison foes in the past. And when he absorbs outside kinetic energy, Sam has used it to increase the power of his own attacks and blows, and can even create explosive shockwaves upon impact. But it is important to note that anything he does with this blast field takes a lot of concentration. He's essentially emitting this energy and actively concentrating on not blasting off, so that he doesn't propel himself into the air when he uses it.
Number 10. Immune to mystical attacks. When you're a superhero, you need to be prepared for pretty much anything. There are a wide array of different types of villains that can come your way. This of course includes magic. So T'Challa worked to find a way to render himself immune to mystical attacks as a way to deal with Doctor Doom. Cause one must never forget that Doctor Doom is a master of science and magic, for he is Doom, and he doesn't discriminate. He has no time for science versus magic pettiness. So T'Challa got an alchemical upgrade that made him able to detect, hide from, and be impervious to mystical attack. Now mileage on this varies. For some it's cool. He saw a problem and a weakness and he solved it. But for others it's like, well, isn't this like when you're playing on the playground, the kid is like, nuh-uh, you can't hit me because suddenly I have immunity. T'Challa can already do a lot, so for some this was overkill. Number 9. Reanimate the dead. Oh yes, Black Panther is a necromancer and actually king of the dead. So he can raise the dead and create and command a zombie army, which may not sound like the most heroic ability, but I guess it's all in how you use it. He was anointed as king of the undead, and with that came all of these mystical abilities. The thing with an ability like this is not only does it feel like it skews villainously, but it also is something that changes the scope of many conflicts. I mean, there are dead people everywhere, so any conflict is just potential zombie horde, or maybe at least zombie gang, or henchman, or wait, heroic, okay, zombie sidekick. Number 8. Humanoid Panther. Earth X is one of the well-remembered alternate universe Marvel stories, a dystopian world where a mutagenic virus has run rampant, courtesy of, you guessed it, Reed Richards. The way these mutations manifested varied, but in Black Panther's case, he became a panther. A human panther. Panther Man. Cat Man. It's hard to be a menacing cat man. I mean, you can push and make a credible case, but it's an uphill battle. The whole story was pretty interesting though, so actual Panther Black Panther fit right in. He fit right in. Marvel is currently mining its past successes, so there is a follow-up series following some miscellaneous characters and kind of a prequel to Earth X, and so far it's pretty solid.
In at number 7, his power levels vary. Over the years, Sam's powers have varied wildly. As we mentioned earlier, in the beginning, Sam was only capable of emitting thermochemical energy from his legs and feet. And while his ability to manipulate his blast fields are pretty consistent, more on those later, the full range of his powers have been speculated. At his peak, we've seen him plummet to the ground from a high altitude and completely devastate several city blocks. He's also faced foes that are considered quite strong in the Marvel Universe. One thing is for sure though, when he applies thrust to his powers, there is a significant hike in what he can do, like increase his strength enough to lift over a ton of weight.
Number 6. Mangaverse. So on Earth X, T'Challa was a literal Panther Man. In the Mangaverse, oh, it's so much better. So he's a dude with a pet panther who can summon spirits, and when he does so, him and his panther combine into Black Panther. Again, a Panther Man, but this time a dude literally fused with the cat. He could also become the Falcon, cause why not? Summoning spirits and animal transfiguration. Practically the same thing. I can't think about any of this without thinking about Manimal.
Number 5. Enhanced Speed. This power is not one that immediately comes to mind when you think of Luke Cage, but he does technically have it. Because of his strength, he's able to push his body a lot farther than the average human. Now, he's not as fast as people with super speed, but he would still be near the top of the list. Plus, he could run through things and it would not really hurt him. Unless it was some sort of adamantium wall or alien metal or something along those lines, then yeah, it might hurt him a little bit, but he'd bounce back. He is super healing, he's all good, you don't have to worry about Luke Cage.
Number 4. Spirit Energy Constructs. So back to King of the Dead. Not only can T'Challa raise a zombie army, but if your body is no more than just, well, you know, it's done, he can raise your spirit and create a kind of physical construct body for you to inhabit. So he'll be corporeal and be able to do some damage. That's intense, this is high sorcery. Scary T'Challa, let the dead rest. But what he really does with this is create a magic spirit of ectoplasm that can affect both our physical plane and the nether realm. Plus it looks cool.
Moving on to number 3, biokinetic blasts. One of the many tricks Cannonball has pulled over the years when utilizing his thermochemical energy field propulsion is that he can create biokinetic blasts out of his hands, like concussive blasts. It takes a lot of concentration to channel it, but it has proven to be an effective attack. In addition to this, he was trained in hand-to-hand combat by Cable and has become an efficient fighter that way.
Number 2. Ghost Panther. The Infinity Warps universe. More amalgams, but this time with other characters within the Marvel Universe. So here we have a fusion of Black Panther and Ghost Rider, specifically Johnny Blaze. Here we have a young T'Challa who was arrogant and rebellious and exiled from Wakanda after getting in some beef with his dad. So he went to America where he met Jericho Simpson, who became his new mentor and renamed him Johnny Blaze. Just cuz. He took up stunt work. But then while doing a stunt, he felt his father dying, which broke his concentration, so he died too. Then he was revived and offered Ghost Rider's powers. I mean, just cuz. He wasn't down for it at first, but accepted when it gave him the opportunity to take on his father's killers. Number 1. Hypercosmic Awareness. So Black Panther has been exposed to the mind of Galactus, and this combined with his exposure to the Heart Herb, well, it changed him. He was able to see the confines of the Marvel Universe, and eventually also the multiverse. So he could have visions of things occurring outside of the 616. What good does this do? Well, I mean, it's great when there's imminent doom. Otherwise, it would just be annoying. Oh man, I know that Peter B. Parker got a gym membership. This information, the world needs it. Alert the media. Black Panther, gossip monger. That would never happen, but it's fun to think about.
Number 10. Falcon's wings. Sam has had many versions of his famous flight suit, the most notable being the ones from Black Panther and the modified version created by Tony Stark. These wings allow Falcon to fly at speeds up to 250 miles per hour, which is as fast as a Tesla Roadster can go. Equipped with a magnetic drive that creates the thrust needed to get him airborne, the suit also comes equipped with a GPS jamming device, vibranium microwave capable of resisting small firearms, and, in the past, it has also featured a Talon-like grappling line. After some modifications made by Tony Stark, the suit's wings were also made of full vibranium, making them much stronger and capable of absorbing large amounts of force. Number 9. Feather projectiles. As seen in the cartoon Superhero Squad and a few other forms of media, the Falcon is able to eject his feathers from his suit and then throw them at his enemies. Being made of vibranium, these projectiles are incredibly hard and can do some serious damage. Number 8, he is in peak human condition. Now, thanks to years of intense training with Captain America, Sam is now considered to be at the peak of human condition. His strength is nothing to joke about, as he is able to send crossbones flying with a single force kick. He was able to break steel chains that tied him to a tank, and he was able to bend metal bars with his bare hands. He is also strong enough to lift at least twice his body weight and can press lift 480 pounds. And don't even get me started on his physical endurance. He continued to function in spite of getting stabbed in the chest by Zemo's sword, and continued to function after being set on fire from one of AIM's agent's flamethrowers while ripping his costume. Man, I wish I was like that. I have trouble even walking up a flight of stairs.
Number 7. Isotope E exposure. Initially, Quicksilver was only able to run at the speed of sound, but after an exposure to isotope E, Quicksilver was able to run at speeds of up to Mach 10, which, combined with the power to resist friction and kinetic impact by vibrating his molecules, enable him to walk on water, even running across the Atlantic Ocean. Not a bad augmentation by any means.
Number 6, he is a aerialist master. It's very well known that Sam is an excellent flyer. I mean, his superhero name is the Falcon, so you kind of hope so, right? Now, thanks to many years of experimentation with his wings, he has mastered the art of flying and fighting in the air. So much so that he is considered one of the best aerial fighters in the Marvel world, exceeding the skills of other flyers such as Iron Man and Ms. Marvel.
Number 5. Time displacement copies. After his sister Scarlet Witch removes most of his powers, Quicksilver receives some new abilities thanks to the Terrigen Mist, a naturally occurring mutagen. These abilities include being able to displace himself in time and move into the future, allowing him to create copies of himself. Notably, he used this ability to take down Magneto in Son of M number 5, overwhelming him with 2 additional copies of himself. Evidently, they shared some form of thought process, even continuing each other's sentences. Probably the coolest power he had, in all honesty.
Number 4. Human-Bird Hybrid. Now, although we're primarily focusing on Sam Wilson, I thought I should mention that there is another hero that uses the name of Falcon, and that is Joaquin Torres, the Arizona-born sidekick to Captain America. As a result of Carl Malice's experiments, Joaquin was turned into a Falcon-human hybrid, giving him the ability to fly by flapping his arms, since they've been partially turned into wings. Now, this has obviously affected his personality as well, giving him enlarged eyes, bird-like talons on both his hand and feet, as well giving him a very distinct feature that I will discuss very shortly.
Number 3. Navigation via vibrations. Another advantage of Quicksilver's abilities is that he's able to detect vibrational patterns in his environment, effectively enabling him to be his own compass. This skill is particularly advantageous when in open areas and allows him to maintain orientation while traveling at high speed. Nothing too special to say about that, but a very useful ability.
Number 2. A cybernetic implant. Now back to Sam. In his brain, he has an implant that enhances his ability to see what birds see, and I will talk on that more next. And that allows him to transmit what he sees into a data storage unit that converts those visuals into images and videos. Now, this is great for some stealthy surveillance and espionage type missions, as it allows for the other members of his team to know exactly what they're going up against ahead of time. And number 1, avian telepathy. Now, in my opinion, this is the coolest power that Sam has, and that's why I put it at number 1. Thanks to the Red Skull and the Cosmic Cube, Sam was given the ability to telepathically link with birds. This ability is strongest with his companion Redwing, but he's also able to extend it to other birds, allowing him to see the world through their eyes, and it also allows him to control the bird that he's connected to. Now, the coolest thing is that this also applies to all avian-like creatures, even the inhuman bird people seen on Aerie or Sky Island. However, this link to them is very limited and restricted to low-grade telepathic readings.